In fact, under Peter Dutton's nuclear plan, it won't be the national energy market, it will be the nationalised energy market because it will only be funded by the government. Now, I forgot when the Liberal Party decided to be socialist in how it operates.
I live in the West Lake Macquarie area within 5 kilometres of one of the Hunter power stations. In view of the looming power crisis hanging over our heads, does the panel consider it wise to delay the replacement of the ageing coal-fired power stations in the Hunter with nuclear reactors?
Hollie, I'll put that to you.
Thanks, Patricia.
I think they want the answer to be no.
Well, you know, the reality is when it comes to nuclear, it's almost a plug-in, plug-out into the transmission system. What no one will tell you, and we've been asking for it in the Senate for a really long time, what is the cost of the second set of transmission lines required for the renewable energy projects? And the reality is transmission is 50% of your electricity bill. Now, the Hunter is an area built on power generation, work within the mining sector, lots of coal mining, lots of power generation. And nuclear would allow areas like the Hunter to continue to develop, to still be an energy hub, to make sure Tomago smelter's still running at capacity without having to come offline so that Sydney can keep its air conditioning on, that we can run our dishwashers whenever we like. I'm not sure if that was your suggestion, Matt, that we didn't put our dishwashers on a particularly hot day.
Too soon.
But, you know, I think, well, I'm sitting in the middle here, I'm going to get it, but I absolutely think that we should be replacing some of those coal-fired power stations with small to medium-sized modular nuclear reactors. The technology is developing. It'll secure jobs in this region and it'll actually give us zero emissions, reliable baseload power.
Well, the first thing I'd say is that the small modular nuclear reactors that you're talking about aren't even invented yet. So let's
Let's get
the facts on the table. That's the first thing.
Let's go to Canada and have a look at the ones over there in Ottawa.
The second thing, well, they're not small modular nuclear
they're medium-sized,
reactors, they're large-scale nuclear reactors. So let's get the facts on the table. The second
technology
thing
is moving.
May I allowed you to finish your answers. The second thing I'd say, you mentioned Tomago smelter. Well, the AI group, with their energy expert, Tennant Reid, only this week said that under the frontier economics modelling, that the Tomago smelter will not exist under a nuclear pathway by 2050. And for people in Wyong, that means 1,200 direct jobs under threat and 3,000 indirect jobs. So if people in Wyong aren't directly affected by this nuclear plan, they will know someone who will be if that Tomago smelter goes out. Because let me tell you, under the frontier economics modelling, it shows 40% less demand generated from the electricity system under AEMO's alternative pathway, which is the step change pathway. And finally, to your question, Jill, what I would say is that I don't think anyone in this audience believes that a nuclear power station that's not going to be built till at least 2035, and that's the most heroic assumption anyone has ever said, right, is going to help anyone with their power bills today. It's just not, okay? What will help people...
Renewables aren't helping today.
What will help people with their power bills today is more supply going into the system. And let me give you an example of a practical example of supply going to the system on an existing site that doesn't need new transmission lines being built. And that's the Waratah Super Battery being built on the Munmora Power Station right now. Private capital is flowing to it, jobs are being created in the local community, and it's spitting out electricity. It will be spitting out electricity once it's commissioned very shortly, and that will mean our existing coal-fired power stations can put more energy into the system because it's freeing up the transmission capacity, and it will allow more renewables to come into the system, providing more supply and putting downward pressure on prices.
Okay. Clearly, you're both members of the Liberal Party, but very different views on the future for nuclear. Parnell, you think there is a future for nuclear?
I think we should have started it years and years ago. Once again, to my point before,
but given we haven't, right, and back to the question about the time frame, that is an issue, right?
The time frame is always an issue. 20 years ago, when we were talking about it, the time frame was an issue. 20 years before that, it was an issue as well. Right now, it's an issue. I think with something like this, you just have to start right away. And the reason we have to start it right away is because this is a question of prosperity long term. So yes, it's not going to come on right away. And yes, it doesn't mean that you should give up renewable energy and other power sources. But if we want a prosperous Australia for our children and our grandchildren, then we need to be producing enough energy and enough reliable energy to be able to create things in Australia. You know, for years, remember 10 years ago we were going to be this knowledge economy. Mm-hmm. Now we're just a production sink, you know, productivity sink. We know nothing, we're doing nothing, we are just sluggishly moving along. So we need Australia to have a prosperous future, and that is going to be driven by energy, and we need geostrategic security as well, and that is also going to be driven by large quantities of emissions-free energy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yep. I think, just to Parnell's point, starting 20 years ago, we're not starting 20 years ago, we're talking about today. And people talking about building nuclear today are the same people that are sort of arguing that we should be building a blockbuster video complex when Netflix is already
when
here.
You start to
There's new technology. There's new technology which looks like wind, solar and storage.
Matt,
It doesn't always rain.
Where are those wind turbines going when they're out of? Where's the solar panels going to landfill?
When we need to.
You know, it's a convenient argument.
The second point that I just want to finish on, Panel, excuse me for 1 second, it's that I agree with you. We need more energy. Energy supply into the system grows our economy, and under the frontier economics nuclear modelling, it will have 40% less energy than the alternative, and that will mean a massive hit to our economy. Under the frontier economics modelling,
it's a
$300 billion smaller economy for Australia. That's the reality.
Okay. So Joe,
Yes.
you and I are the...
Policy giant, Joe Hildebrand. Yes.
Well, we're both journos here.
That's right. We know better than everybody.
Yeah.
The minister get to sit out of this.
I've never seen him have such a good time.
He's really enjoying himself here. Thanks,
Pressure,
Patricia.
I will bring Joe... Well, it's your policy, to be fair, right, Senator?
Absolutely, and I own it.
Yeah, but Joe,
Are you still a
obviously...
member?
Absolutely.
It's our policy then. It's our policy.
Not the New South Wales Liberals.
20 years ago it would have been fine, but now too late? What do you
Yeah, it's like the old joke, you know, hey farmer, how do I get to Albuquerque? And he goes, oh, I wouldn't start from here. It's like, we're here now, aren't we? I mean, this is what, you know, my mum's special friend Don said when he didn't want to make 2 trips into town to the vet to put my dog Barney down. He said, come on, Chris, we're here now. And I never saw the dog again. The truth is, we are here now. So there's no good saying we should have started. And again, it's a bit like the floods argument. Oh, well, you shouldn't have built your house here. Oh, we should have started 20 years ago. I am completely nuclear agnostic. If it works, it works. If it's great, if the small modular reactors do end up coming online, they could absolutely be a game changer. But as Matt rightly said, they do not exist yet. They have not been able to be made into anything remotely commercially viable. If they do exist and we can plug them on the side of a smelter, great. If we can do it with green hydrogen and using solar and wind to create electrolyzers to fuel the hydrogen cells, they can then plug it on the side of the smelter. But guess what? That doesn't exist either. So we should be doing everything we can to make sure we have all our options open, so when that magic sort of thing does go off, we are there and ready, and we have the intellectual base to be able to
That's an interesting point, Mark Butler. That would mean taking the ban off nuclear. Is that worth doing?
Well, I mean, the problem with nuclear, well, there are 2 problems. One is it's too expensive. You're not going to underpin an aluminium smelting industry with nuclear power. It's the most expensive form of power on the planet. You're just not going to do it.
It's not just going to be aluminium. Let's be fair.
We're talking about Tomago.
We made an example. It's not going to be the only thing it's powering.
The second thing, it's going to take too long. The question was about extending the coal-fired generators. Whether that's wise or not, reasonable people can disagree, but it's just not practical. They were built in the 70s and the early 80s. They are about to fall over. When we have really hot summers, and thankfully we haven't had one for a little while, but when we have really hot summers, they just break down constantly. There is no way we're extending that generation of New South Wales and Victorian coal generators into the 2040s. And if we're not doing that, what's going to happen in the meantime? You know, because the idea of taxpayer subsidised nuclear power will crash renewable energy investment. So get rid of that. So there's no renewable energy
it'll
investment.
Crash nuclear energy investment.
No, nuclear energy investment
Sorry.
will crash renewable
That's
energy
what I meant.
investment. Like the idea that you can build all this stuff, but down the track, this big taxpayer subsidised fleet of nuclear reactors is going to basically eat your lunch. It's going to crash renewable
Well,
energy.
you're
You're not going to have renewable energy.
Nothing happens.
Renewables
Nothing happens for 20
subsidies.
years while these
Renewables are
coal-fired
all
generators
taxpayer
shut down.
subsidised.
But is it true that it would crash the investment in them? Because you say you're agnostic about the...
Well, we are technologically agnostic, and people invest with what's the best technology. And if building,
You're betting on
if
nuclear, you're
building,
not agnostic.
no, we're not. We are technologically agnostic. We are looking at a full suite. What we're seeing, though, is this absolute ideological opposition to anything that is not renewables. We are seeing investment move away from green hydrogen at a rate of knots. We are seeing all of those offshore wind farms that Mr Bowen wants to put on all of these coastal communities, that all of the funding is moving away from them, and those projects are going away. This funding will go where the success is likely to be. That's why people invest. They want to make money. At the moment, people investing in renewable energy do it because it's so heavily subsidised by government. They're getting payments back from all of you, the taxpayers.
Let me just say, I'm not anti-nuclear, but I am anti-nonsense. And the reality is, you talk about private investment. Well, there's no private investors knocking down anyone's door to build a nuclear reactor. In fact, under Peter Dutton's nuclear plan, it won't be the national energy market, it will be the nationalised energy market, because it will only be funded by the government. Now, I forgot when the Liberal Party decided to be socialist in how it operates.
How many wind and solar farms are being built without a handout from the taxpayer? Zero. Zero. They are all being built on subsidies.
All right.